Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. This is your girl, Black and Indigenous American, coming to you live once again. This YouTube live video, as you can tell in the title, is going to be about a couple of things. First, what I want to do is I want to shout out a couple of books that I bought a few years back when I was really deep in genealogy and trying to figure out how to get around some of the brick walls that many of us, especially us with ancestry that was of color, right, we have to deal with. So I came across a couple of books, and so I was going through a box of mine full of books, and I decided, you know what, let me pull out a couple of books and start this session with you guys tonight. So anyway, this book that I bought a few years back is called Black Genesis, a resource book for African American genealogy. This book I will reference in the description box along with the link on Amazon if you care to check it out. I believe I bought it for like 25 bucks. I think I did. Don't quote me. That's what it has on the back of this book, the price, but it doesn't mean that I paid $25. But anyway, I was looking at some of my notes because, you know, I like to write in my books, and I came across a couple of things that I highlighted. So in chapter 2, it actually has a list of important dates to look out for. And when you're dealing with African-American genealogy. Now, as you all know, African-American doesn't necessarily mean just Black, but I actually learned out of this book that in the state of Virginia, if you look in the Black slave records or African-American slave records in the state of Virginia, now I don't know about other states, that those records also show all slave and indentured servants, not just Black folks. So they reference Europeans, indentured servants like the Scotch-Irish people. They also listed American Indian or Indigenous American people. They listed actually an East Indian. I actually saw in the list an East Indian in the state of Virginia as a slave. But guess what? Regardless of your ethnicity, your culture, your race, if you were considered an indentured servant and or slave, you were in the Black folks' slavery records. Okay, so sometimes you have to also, when you're trying to find your indigenous connection or what have you, you have to look in records that doesn't necessarily identify it as Native American. You may have to look in African American, Black, Negro, slave, whatever records that you probably wouldn't think to look in. So I would suggest to do that. So anyway, for instance, here they have a timeline. So it started at 1619. It says 20 Africans arrived from Cheroenhaka, which I'm assuming that's in West Africa, to Jamestown, Virginia. It didn't say slaves. That's a misconception. In 1619, those Africans were not considered slaves. Okay. In 1664, Africans owned considerable property in New Amsterdam, which is New York. 1775, General George Washington, revising an earlier decision, ordered recruiting officers to accept free Negroes in the American Army. More than 5,000 Negroes, mostly Northern Blacks, fought against the British. In 1776, the Declaration of Independence was approved in Philadelphia. In 1777, Vermont took the lead in abolishing slavery. Wow, go Vermont. Who knew, right? By 1804, all the states north of Delaware had taken action leading to the gradual abolition, of slavery. Some slaves were seen in New Jersey as late as 1860. However, Pennsylvania passed a law for gradual abolition in 1780. A New Hampshire law was passed in 1783. In 1784, Connecticut and Rhode Island took similar action. Manumission Acts were passed in New York in 1785 and in New Jersey in 1786, though effective legislation stipulating gradual abolition was not achieved in the states until 1799 and 1804. And it goes on and on and on, this timeline, which I think is very, very, very helpful. Also, one thing I've learned over the years is when you're looking in the records, whatever records you're looking at, kind of avoid looking at the race because that could throw you off quite a bit. I was just thinking about someone real quick here, and I will talk about him in a little bit. I just want to make sure I get his name right. Okay. Actually contacted him. His last name, I believe, is Dixon. Yeah, I think I'll go back to that in a minute. But anyway, I was just thinking about him because he did a conference with Gabrielle or Gabby Tayac, who is Piscataway. He is Saponi from Ohio, and some things that he mentioned. When I find that video, I will actually play that live here so you guys can listen to it. And I also will put a link in the description box later. He did a great job. I actually contacted him years ago. I wrote him a letter. I lost contact with him. And I think what I may do is copy the last snail mail letter that he sent me, and then put that letter in with my new letter so he can kind of figure out where we left off, because this is not email, obviously, right? This is snail mail. And it's been years since I communicated with him, but there was something he said in the video that caught my attention, and I think it will definitely be helpful for you guys as well. So, like I said, after this video, I'm going to put in the description box that video that I'm referring to. Is actually in correlation with the IndiVisible Lives, African Native American Lives of America. I've talked about this several times on my channel. The traveling exhibit along with the actual book. And so he was on a panel or whatever. I think this was in New York City at the National Museum of the American Indian at that location. I think that's where they had that. I want to say it was, I'm trying to remember what year it was. Forgive me for forgetting that. But he has a lot of great information as well that he shared. And also, like I said, I was communicating with him back and forth via snail mail. And so there could possibly be a connection with him. And like I said, Tudelo, Saponi, you know, they're pretty much the same people. I mean, give or take a few differences, I think. But so anyway, I'll come back to him in a minute. I also I underlined something on this in this timeline in this book. It was 1865. It says Congress established within the War Department a Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands, known as the Freedmen's Bureau. Interesting, right? In its 5 years of existence, the Bureau set up 4,330 schools enrolling 247,000 students, and aided in the establishment of such African-American colleges at Atlanta University, Fisk University, Hampton Institute, which is now known as Hampton University now in the state of Virginia, in Hampton, Virginia, and Howard University. Howard University is in DC, for those who don't know. The United States government also chartered the Freedmen's Bank in Washington, D.C. to encourage financial responsibility among the former slaves. Interesting. On April the 4th, 1865, the headquarters of the Freedmen's Bank opened in New York. Shortly thereafter, branches were established in Louisville, Nashville, New Orleans, Vicksburg, and Washington. By 1872, there was a total of 34 branches, of all located in the South, with the exception of the New York and Philadelphia offices. The Freedmen's Bank closed its doors on June the 20th, 1874. Interesting. Do you know how powerful that bank would have been if it stayed in existence? Like, for real, for real? Let's see. And it goes on and on and on. I thought this was a really great reference book. It's set up like a textbook, you know. Yeah, I actually found it very, very helpful. And I think you guys, if you haven't already and you're interested in genealogy, which looking at my video and my channel, I would think you will be interested. I mean, they have cemetery, church records, military records. It's kind of organized based on the state and different things that you can, check out. Now, some of this stuff may be, you know how URLs change all the time. So things like that, you may have to just Google it versus just going to these websites that they're listing letter by letter, because they may have changed. But they have contacts, research contact people, organizations. I mean, it's just a wealth of information in here. I mean, it's just amazing. Newspapers. Again, this is based on whatever state or territory you're interested in researching. State archives, census records. I mean, this is a really great tool to even get started in genealogy that will help you kind of, not waste a whole lot of time. Again, Black Genesis. Black Genesis, a resource book for African American genealogy. This is by James M. Rose, PhD, and Alice Eichholz, Eichholz, PhD, and then she has CG at the end. I don't know what that acronym means. CG, maybe certified genealogist. I don't know. But yeah, I think this is a really great resource. So. Again, just because it says Black or African American, that does not mean that you cannot find ways, roundabout ways, to find your Indigenous American ancestry as well, especially if they were also slaves. And see, that's the misconception, guys. Just because someone was labeled a slave, that didn't necessarily mean that that person was a Negro or whatever. And just because someone's labeled colored in the records, that does not necessarily mean that they're Black. Colored is anything that's not white. That's what colored is. So I suggest it. Check it out. Next book. Many of you guys probably already know about this book. You know, people that have been let down by the public school system when it comes to world history or U.S. history or whatever. This book right here will have you pissed off, okay, by the time you finish reading it. It's called Lies My Teacher Told Me. Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong, okay? And so, like I said, I went in here and I just went to town. I mean, I was highlighting everything. Let's see. Like, for instance, on page 95, it says, the true story of Thanksgiving reveals embarrassing facts. The Pilgrims did not introduce the tradition. Eastern Indians had observed autumnal harvest celebrations for centuries, although George Washington did set aside days for national Thanksgiving. Our modern celebrations date back only to 1863. During the Civil War, when the Union needed all the patriotism that such an observance might muster, Abraham Lincoln proclaimed Thanksgiving as a national holiday. The Pilgrims had nothing to do with it. Not until the 1890s did they even get included in the tradition. For that matter, no one used the term pilgrims until 1870s. Okay. Something else that caught my attention, and I'm not going to read too much out of here, obviously, because I need to move on. Let's see. Oh, a lot of people, when they think of slaves, again, they think of Black folks, right? Black people were not the only slaves in this country, okay? So on page 106, for instance, it says, let's see, let me go back a little bit here. Europeans, this is page 105, Europeans' enslavement of Native Americans has a long history. Let's sit there for a minute. Let's just sit there for a minute. Because this history right here gets overlooked quite a bit. Textbooks used in elementary schools tell that Ponce de Leon went to Florida to seek the mythical foundation of youth. They do not say that his main business was to capture slaves for Hispaniola. In New England, Indian slavery led directly to African slavery. The first Blacks imported there in 1638 were brought from the West Indies to be exchanged for Native Americans from Connecticut. On the eve of the New York City slave rebellion of 1712, in which Native and African slaves united, about 1 resident in 4 was enslaved, and 1 slave in 4 was Indian. Okay. A 1730 census of South Kingston, Rhode Island, showed 935 whites, 333 African slaves, and 223 Native American slaves. The center of Native American slavery, like African American slavery, was South Carolina. Its population in 1708 included 3,960 free whites, 4,100 African slaves, 1,400 Indian slaves, and 120 indentured servants, presumably white. These numbers do not reflect the magnitude of Native slavery, however, because they omit the export trade. From Carolina, as from New England, colonists sent Indian slaves who might escape to the West Indies, where they could never escape, in exchange for Black slaves. Charleston shipped more than 10,000 natives in chains to the West Indies in 1 year. Further west, so many Pawnee Indians were sold to whites that Pawnee became the name applied to the plains to all slaves, whether they were of Indian or African origin. On the West Coast, Pearson Reading, a manager of John Sutter's huge grant of Indian land in Central California, extolled the easy life he led in 1844. He says, quote, "The Indians of California make as obedient and humble slaves as the Negro in the South," end quote. In the Southwest, whites enslaved Navajos and Apaches right up to the middle of the Civil War. And it goes on and on and on, guys. Again, this book Once I dove in this book, it was on and popping. Lies My Teacher Told Me, Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong by James W. Loewen. I believe that's how you pronounce his name, Loewen. I will leave this information, the link to Amazon and all that in the description box later this weekend. So check it out. I suggest this book. On the back here, it says it was $16. I don't know if I spent $16 for it. It may not even be that much now because I got this a few years ago, but I suggest you guys check it out. Okay? And I haven't been looking at my comments, so let's see what you guys have to say before I continue. And those are all of the books that I'm suggesting at the moment, for now. Ope Miha, peace, and you are absolutely correct. Peace to you as well. I hope all is well with you. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you're still watching. Love Legacy, peace and blessings. Peace, blessings to you. You say Sue, okay. Ope Mia, yes, Dr. Heriberto Dixon is the person. Dr. Tayac is interviewing. Yes, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And you know what? I think what I'll do is I'm going to find that letter. Not now, obviously, because I'm live. But I'm going to find a letter between me and Dr. Dixon. I think I said Hickson or Nixon, but I meant Dixon. So thank you for correcting me. And I will kind of like read some of the things that that he shared with me to see if there was some kind of connection with he and I as far as our families. Because he mentioned Vance County or Henderson, North Carolina, and my paternal side of my family, my church home and everything is pretty much Vance County. Actually, to be exact, it's town, was it Townsend? Town something. It's been so long. Let me make sure I get the town right. The town itself is only, I think the town itself is like 15 or 20 minutes north of Henderson, North Carolina. It's right on the border of North Carolina and Virginia. And my church, the property is on, like one half of the property is in Virginia, the other half is in North Carolina. So let me make sure I have that correct. Let's see. Okay, let me make sure. Vance County. He mentioned Nutbush, North Carolina. And I think that little community is right next to where my family lived, in that area. Let's see. Okay. I mean, we used to like I said, it was our church, our family church. So we would cross over. We'll cross over. I mean, if you're looking at a map right now of Virginia and North Carolina, you see this big body of water. It's called John H. Keir Reservoir. We also call parts of it Bugs Island Lake. We would cross that all the time to go to church. And we were like, always like, it's funny because when you enter the state, you leave the state, you'll see like, welcome to Virginia, welcome to North Carolina, welcome to Virginia, because it was like this going to church, right? We were in and out of the state, both states, just to get to our church. So let me see. So like I said, Henderson, North Carolina was about maybe 15, 20 minutes south of where my church home is. And I'm trying to figure out the name of the town while I'm thinking about it, but I can go back to that as well. But anyway, what he was talking about in that video when he was the panel with Gabby, and when he mentioned that, I was like, wait a minute, he's talking about my home. Like, even though I was born and raised in Virginia, I was born and raised in the Palmer Spring area, which you have part of Palmer Springs is in Virginia, and the other part of Palmer Springs is in North Carolina. And so my paternal family is from North Carolina, from that region. And when he mentioned that, I was like, oh, okay. I need to contact this guy and see what else I can learn from him. Because he has a wealth of information, you know, among other things. And so I know there's a connection with the people in Ohio, as far as the Saponi people, the Tutelo people, with the Virginians. And then you have Saponi people that, you know, kind of went in and out of both Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, New York State, and eventually somewhere in Canada. So we, as Saponi people, you know, they moved around quite a bit. So when he mentioned that, I was like, ooh, okay. All right. So I'll get back to that. So Indian Genesis, yes. Ope Mia says peace to Love Legacy. Okay. And then Love Legacy said you already brother. Okay. So they communicated with themselves. So that's fine. All right. So to continue with this video, I wanted to talk about the suicide epidemic within tribal communities. In particular, I'm thinking about the United States of America, tribal communities. And I find it an epidemic more so than other groups of people. And I'm trying to wrap my brain around it as far as the mental health aspect of it. I'm no expert. I don't have the answers, but I would like someone out there to respond with this, because I'm trying to understand. My heart goes out to those who feel hopeless, that they have no hope, that they would just rather just walk into the spiritual world, you know, just be done with this physical world and just walk on. And my heart goes out to them. My heart goes out. And the reason why I'm saying them, because my experience growing up within the African American community, there was always something tragic going on. I only experienced one relative that actually committed suicide. It's really sad, but I'll just give you, you know, some highlights of what happened. His mother, which was my mom's, I believe, third cousin, she took a missing. And she was gone all day. And my cousin, I'm gonna call him D as in Donald. Okay, I'm just gonna call him D. He was worried about his mom, like, you know, where was she? She wasn't home. No one heard from her. And this is before cell phones, and, you know, before pages or whatever like that. And so he had like an instinct, like, okay, let me check this house. Maybe she's over here. And when he went into the house, he found his mother murdered. And she had an ice pick in her back. She was stabbed, I don't know how many times. You know, one thing about family, when something tragic like that happens, and see, I was a little girl, so I mean, I don't remember anything. But, you know, as a child, they don't talk too much to children about stuff like that. I just know that I went to the funeral. No, I didn't go to his mom's funeral. I was too young. I don't remember all of that. But anyway, so that in and of itself changed him. And so he suffered with depression. And he was always talking about taking his own life. And so he talked about it so much over the years that some of the relatives, and I'm sure they didn't mean it, but they was like, okay, if you really don't want to live, you might as well just like, if you don't want to live, do something about it or something like that. Like they just, like they thought it was just all talk. They thought he just wanted attention or whatever like that. But for years, he always threatened to take his own life. And so he got on drugs. I think he was on cocaine, crack, or whatever like that. Really, really bad. I think when he moved to Northern Virginia, that's when he got strung out, among other things. And I think what he was doing, he was trying to numb what he saw as a child. And that's when he found his mom murdered. And so, you know, long story short, what I heard through the grapevine is the night that he took his own life, because, you know, he had a girlfriend, he had a young little girl, right? She probably was a toddler at the time. And he was going back and forth with his girlfriend. And she was upset and frightened, so she called the cops because she thought this dude's really going to take his life, you know. Even though he said that he was going to, you know, take his life all these times. But right now, I really feel like, you know, this is the day. So she called the cops, and then she called his aunt, which is my fourth cousin or whatever. And so, long story short, from what I heard through the grapevine, the cops, everybody showed up. Everybody screaming at him, put the gun down, put the gun down, put the gun down. And apparently he said, God, forgive me. He put the gun up to his head and pulled the trigger. Okay. And I remember when I got the phone call, I wasn't that close to him, by the way. But my older sister, he and my older sister grew up, and they were like peanut butter and jelly, 2 peas in a pod, and that was like her best friend. And when she got the news, she was so pissed off and so mad. Oh, she was so angry. She was so angry. And so at the funeral, you know how the family will go up to the casket, or friends of the family will go up to the casket, pay their respects or whatever. She wouldn't look at him. She did not, she kind of was forced to go into the church, but she sat in the back. She didn't sit with the family, and she just looked down the whole time, or she looked around. She didn't look in the direction of his casket. And I think over the years, she's kind of like let some of that anger go, but she was so mad because when someone's hurting like that and they take their own life, I think sometimes they realize that they don't end their life, and that's it. It's like the people that love them suffer. And again, this relative is the only relative that I know of that took his own life. And he was brought up in the same community I was brought up in. You know, we all were kind of like, in the state of Virginia, you were either white or black. That's just how it was. That's the way the system was set up, thanks to the Racial Integrity Act and them, you know, people who were so afraid folks were going to mix with white folks. So, you know, that's kind of how it was set up. Even though we have what we have in our genetics, right, our DNA, and amongst ourselves, we would talk about it, but publicly, we were African American. So I say all of this because suicide is definitely a problem across the board, but for whatever reason, it seemed like it's an epidemic within indigenous populations in the Americas, well, at least the United States of America. I just don't understand it. Because again, I only know one person that I was related to. But then if you talk to someone who was brought up in an indigenous American culture, and remember, it's plural. There's plenty of cultures out there that are indigenous American. But just across the board, to make this thing simple here, there are people who Even here near the Baltimore region, Baltimore City, you know, there's so much crime and murder and everything going on. But at the same time, you have indigenous American people that live in these major cities, right? Not necessarily living on a reservation or a small town or in a very tight-knit tribal community. But it just seemed like across the board, like just recently. And God rest his soul, I didn't know him. I knew of him. And he was very much involved in indigenous American activities. I've seen him around countless times. He lived further north. That's all I'm going to say. And he was found a week after people started wondering what happened. Like, I haven't heard from so-and-so. Have you heard? You know, people start asking questions like, have you heard from so-and-so? Long story short, he was found in his place. And he must have been there for about a week. And I don't know the details because, again, I don't know this person. I just heard through the grapevine. He was connected to some people I'm connected to, and I found out through the grapevine what happened, but I don't know the details. I didn't ask, but I believe this person suffered from depression, among other things, and I believe this person was somewhat suicidal. But yeah, this just happened recently. And my heart breaks because people have lost hope. And again, I'm just trying to understand, like, I'm trying to wrap this around my brain. Like, out of all the communities worldwide that suffer, that have been oppressed, beaten down spiritually, I'm trying to understand, why is it that our indigenous brothers and sisters are suffering more with this suicidal epidemic? I'm aware of boarding schools. I'm aware of abuse. I'm aware of just the demonic actions that were put upon our indigenous American brothers and sisters that lived in their culture, right? They lived in their indigenous American culture, whatever it was, right? They didn't live as Black people. They didn't live as white people. They lived as indigenous American, whatever their clan, whatever their tribe is, right? Somebody help me. I don't know if it has something to do with this is their land. There's no other land out there. Like, for instance, as a Black person, as an American, African American, or whatever, people can still go back to the motherland, right? Africa or wherever, right? But then indigenous people here, I don't know if the depression or what have you is heightened because this is indigenous American land. And they're connected to this land because this is their roots. And maybe people feel like there's no way out. There's no other place to go, you know, because this is their homeland. I don't know. So I'm right now looking at the Indian Health Services website, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So it's like a sub title. The Federal Health Program for American Indians and Alaskan Natives. It says, despite the strengths of American Indian and Alaska Native families and communities, suicide remains a devastating and all too frequent event. Complex interrelated factors contribute to an increased suicide risk among American Indian and Alaska Natives people, and include mental health disorders, substance abuse, intergenerational trauma, and community-wide issues. The factors that protect American Indian and Alaskan Natives youth and young adults against suicidal behavior are a sense of belonging to one's culture, a strong tribal spiritual bond, the opportunity to discuss problems with family or friends, feeling connected to family, and positive emotional health. A cooperation among tribal, federal, and other partners is imperative to create a safety net of interconnected programming, health, education, law enforcement, public health, and well-being, economic development, physical and behavioral health to maximize effectiveness of services and to protect individuals against suicide risk. So again, my heart goes out to those who are suffering, who are in deep depression. Depression is real. Suicidal thoughts are real. Even if you think that they are just calling out for attention or what have you, take it seriously, because you never know if that's going to be the day that they decide that they're done. Okay. So on this website, they have National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-TALK. Again, that's 1-800-273-TALK, which is 8255. They also have a link to mentalhealth.gov. Then they also on this website have Veterans Crisis Line for those who are going through depression and what have you, that have been negatively affected by being in the armed forces, the military and what have you. So there are resources out there, and there's always hope. Always. I mean, I've had moments where I felt like I just wanted to just disappear and not necessarily commit suicide. I just wanted to, you know how that reset button, you just want to press that reset button and just start over. And that's where I was a few years back. But I still had hope, you know. I might have felt down. I might have felt depression, you know. But at the same time, deep down, I still had that hope. And unfortunately, you have people who, you know, they just lose that hope. But there's always hope. There's always hope. And then again, I don't necessarily understand another person's pain, right? That person's pain is probably on another level that I just can't comprehend. So again, whoever is watching this will eventually watch this live video later. Help me understand the difference between indigenous populations with the this frequent event of suicide versus suicidal events within other oppressed populations. I'm thinking of India right now, East India, third world country. You have so many people who live in the slums. And I don't ever remember, at least on a national level, I've never heard of a crisis like this. People committing suicide like this. Again, I'm still trying to wrap my brain around it, because you do have other groups of populations that are living in horrible conditions. And really, that's all they know. Like they were born in it, and that's all they know. And they just feel like, well, this is my life. So, you know, just make the best out of it. I don't know. That, to me, that's a mystery. And so again, if anyone's out there feeling hopeless, there's always hope. Again, they do have programs, suicide prevention and care programs. Just reach out for help. It's never too late, and you matter, okay? All right, the next thing that I want to do is I want to transition from that, because again, I'm not an expert when it comes to suicide and things of that nature. I just wanted to kind of, you know, put that out there. But first, before I move on, I want to read these comments. Okay. Wanut C says, feathers up, tribe up, wise up, rise up. All right. Linnell Vital says hello. Hello, Linnell. Salute to you. I believe your brother Wanutsi. So salute to you. Let's see. Mitsuck says, "Oh my gosh, she looks so familiar." I look familiar. Really? Well, I'm a Virginian. Okay. I live in a Mid-Atlantic region, so I don't know. Maybe you've seen someone who looks like me. Maybe. Sweet. Hi, Sweet. Look at you. You're back on again. Thanks for chiming in. So you said depression, no joke. You found God. He is the answer no matter who you are. You know what? I am a strong believer in a higher power, regardless of what you call it. And I think that higher power is what woke me up from some of those dark moments in life, is because I always believe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Regardless of what you're going through, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Bipolar is rampant, right? Many families, individuals suffer from bipolar. 1 minute, everything's great. Life is wonderful. Let's live it up. And then within seconds, you're like, life sucks. I'm miserable. I want to die. That's serious, being bipolar, whatever. So, you have that going on. So, that's under the mental illness category, I guess, being bipolar. But depression is no joke. It is no joke. Sometimes you just, like for me, I want the best for everyone. I want people to live their best lives. And I think sometimes it may come across as I'm inconsiderate or insensitive when people may try to talk to me about their problems. Because right now, I believe in a higher power. I believe we have power within us. And I believe in law of attraction, right? And if you're not familiar with law of attraction, you can just do a little research about it. But really, it's whatever you set your mind on, right? You focus on. What you're doing is you're creating that reality. So if you're focused on, negativity, whatever like that, guess what? You're going to create more of that in your life. And then I've just learned that, I don't know, the past 2-3 years, like I really have to pay attention to my thoughts, focusing on me, not someone else and what he or she is doing, but on me. And I'm definitely I'm definitely still on that path, because I do get triggered sometimes, y'all. Y'all been watching my videos and some things will trigger me. But I've learned to not focus too much on what this person or that person is doing or saying or acting, but focus on me, how I'm going to react, right? And so I've learned when I change my thinking, and I focus on what I expect in my life, I've definitely have noticed a huge change. And again, I'm on this life journey. Everyone has their own path, their own blueprint. But on my path, I've learned thus far that what you expect in your life, as far as something that's good, you have to keep focusing on it. And so when you have mental illness or you suffer from, deep depression, it's kind of difficult for someone who is in that funk, in that dark place, to think happy thoughts. You know what I mean? Because what they're doing, they're experiencing what they thought about in the past that has manifested. And so they're going through whatever that was, whatever they were thinking about. So I've learned, at least for me, that I need to get out of that stinky thinking, as some people call it, and focus on what you expect in your life. You expect to be mentally, physically, and spiritually healthy, infinite wellness, infinite, whatever. And you have to speak it and believe it and feel it. I am strong, right? I am somebody. And when someone is in a dark space, like about to take their own life, many times they have, again, lost all hope. But those who are reaching out that you think, oh, they just want attention, they just want attention, don't take that lightly. Don't take that lightly. Even if it's a broken record, like, oh, here we go again, you know, so-and-so is, you know, want attention. But you know what? Don't take it lightly, because you don't know what that person is going through, what he or she is feeling. You don't know. So you can't assume that that person just wants attention. It could be the case, but just be on the safe side and just check in on them and try to help, you know. Sweet says, hello, my friend. Yes, I know. You talking good. Yes, you're right. Okay, thanks, Sweet. Okay, so going forward in this video, I wanted to talk about, let's see. I was thinking about Thomas Jefferson today. I was thinking about Thomas Jefferson. You're probably wondering why. Well, again, in the state of Virginia, when you do genealogy and things of that nature, you know, you come across content that I'm about to read right now, and you have that aha moment, right? And, you know, I was thinking about federally recognized tribes the other day, in particular, our very first federally recognized tribe in the state of Virginia, the Pamunkey people. And I made comments in the past about my opinions about them probably being the first federally recognized tribe in the state of Virginia, and I was right. But anyway, Thomas Jefferson made some comments back in the day about some Virginian Native Americans, right? Different groups and such. And so I came across this one website. This website is xroots.virginia.edu. And this link I will put in the description box later. Let's see. I'm just going to read a paragraph. I'm not going to really spend too much time talking about Thomas Jefferson, but just to give you guys an idea of what Virginians, natives were dealing with and are still dealing with. You know, the remnants of that ideology of that time period. You know, it kind of spilled over into obviously this era that we're in. So anyway, I'm just going to read a little bit. This is one little paragraph that I'm going to read, and then I'm going to move on from that because I don't want to spend too much time reading it. Very little can now be discovered of the subsequent history of these tribes severely. Okay. The Chickahominies were moved about the year 1661 to Mattaponi River. Their chief, with one from each of the tribes of the Pamunkeys and Mattaponies, attended the Treaty of Albany in 1865. This seems to have been the last chapter in their history. They retained, however, their separate names so late as 1705 and were at length blended with the Pamunkeys and the Mattaponies, and exist at present only under their names. There remain of the Mattaponies 3 or 4 men only, and they have more Negro than Indian blood in them. Again, this is Thomas Jefferson, okay? They have lost their language, have reduced themselves by voluntary sales to about 50 acres of land, which lie on the river of their own name, and have from time to time been joining the Pamunkeys, from whom they are distant but 10 miles. The Pamunkeys are reduced to about 10 or 12 men, tolerably pure from mixture with other colors. The older ones among them preserved their language in a small degree, which are the last on earth, as far as we know, of the Powhatan language. They have about 300 acres of very fertile land on Pamunkey River, so it encompassed by water that a gate shuts in the whole, whatever that means, right? Of the Nottoways, not a male is left. A few women constitute the remains of that tribe. They are seated on Nottoway River in Southampton County on very fertile lands. At a very early period, certain lands were marked out and appropriated to these tribes and were kept from encroachment by the authority of the laws. They have usually had trustees appointed whose duty was to watch over their interests and guard them from insult and injury. That's all I'm gonna read, but let's go back to the Negro part. It says, there remain of the Mattaponies 3 or 4 men only, and they have more Negro than Indian blood in them. They have lost their language, have reduced themselves by voluntarily sales to about 50 acres of land, which lie on the river of their own name, and have from time to time been joining the Pamunkeys, from whom they are distant but 10 miles. The Pamunkeys are reduced to about 10 or 12 men, tolerably pure from mixture with other colors. Yep, that was Thomas Jefferson. Okay, so I'm looking at Virginia right now, the Virginia Department of Education. And the name of this article is called Ethno-Historical Snapshot of the Cheroenhaka Nottoway Indian Tribe. So all this is compiled by Chief Walt Redhawk Brown. He's their chief or whatever of that Nottoway group or band. The reason why I kind of want to read a little bit from here is because if you haven't heard of Bird, you may want to look him up. He has some diaries about some natives in the state of Virginia back in 1728. Yeah, William Byrd. He had, just documented his thoughts and what he observed about these creatures, right? These exotic beings in the state of Virginia. And so he mentioned something, and I wanted to bring that to your attention as well. Let's see, get to that real quick. Okay, Byrd noted that the Palisade Fort was square about 100 yards on each side. He also described how the young men danced for him with their faces painted, singing and keeping step to the sound of a gore drum, stretched tight with an animal skin. Byrd's papers also note how the women looked in their finery, damsels of old, whatever that means, to include the white and blue couch shell beads in their braided hair and around their necks. He wrote of the red and blue match coat wrapped loosely around their body that their mahogany skin shone through. He also noted that though they be sad colored, that they would make great wives for the English planters, and their dark skin would bleach out in 2 generations. This is how I got down in Virginia, y'all. So those indigenous American people that he was documenting, were brown in complexion. Back in 1728-ish, around that time. Between 1710 and 1730 something, I think that's when he was documenting what he observed amongst these people. And this was, in that area, Cortland, Virginia region. But again, that was his observation of how the people looked and what they were doing and all that. So even though everyone has their own perspective, their own experiences, you can read, let's say the Bible, for instance. You have in the New Testament, you have the book of John, the book of this, the book of that. And it's pretty much talking about the same events, but there's different perspectives of the same event. Some people thought of this, or they may have noticed that, but the next person didn't notice it. So it's over here, written over here. So I say all of this because sometimes when you have documentation like this written down so many years ago, he or she, more than likely, probably was a man writing it. The way they would describe a people, maybe the next person wouldn't see it that way, right? But in his case, William Byrd, that's B-Y-R-D, that's his last name, he saw mahogany skinned people. And whatever garments they were wearing, it was red and black. And the women wore shells in their braids. And the men's faces were painted. Just by reading this one paragraph right here, just a FYI, in the state of Virginia, there were, I would say some, I'm not going to say everybody, but some Indigenous American people that were documented, skin color was mahogany. It wasn't fair skin, let's just say. And this whole bleaching out the dark skin thing, yeah, that's how it went down in Virginia. So, and then eventually, like I said, with the Racial Integrity Act, and then paper genocide, changing people's ethnic identity on documents after, well, it started in 1920. And dealing with all of that, yeah, so that's all I have to say about that. For those who have a negative opinion to say about people who are embracing their Indigenous American ancestry, but just happen to not be light enough in skin complexion, or they hair, what?
Or dark enough.
Or dark enough. That happens as well. Believe it or not, that happens as well. There's, you just have some people, and again, I'm going back to the whole tribal card, federal recognition nonsense. You have so many people who are, tribal police or whatever, how they've been brainwashed to think that people, a particular certain color or whatever, they're obsolete or whatever from even claiming their Indigenous ancestry. It's like, do you understand the history in the Southeast of the United States of America? Do you understand the history? Have you even read some of these documents, like from this William Byrd guy or anybody else that was back in the day that actually was there, that documented it and wrote it down? Have you taken the time to read what the folks looked like back then? Like, they didn't just become dark-skinned overnight because they mixed with black folks, okay? A lot of them people were already Indigenous American, doing their own thing, living their own lives, but they just happened to not be lighter in complexion. So you got that, that going back and forth with the whole skin thing. But again, I'm speaking as far as the state of Virginia, because that's where I'm from. This is how it gets down. And this is how it's gotten down. And back to the whole Pamunkey thing. I am not surprised. I repeat, I am not surprised that they got federal recognition first. Okay. So let me get back to the comments here. Native Mr. V. Hello, long time no see. I'm back. Oh, hi. Nice to see you again. I remember you commenting on some of my videos. Thanks for stopping by. I hope I didn't bore you guys yet. Ms. Zach says, love legacy, brother. Thank you. Sweet says, you are right about the tribe. Share that, please. Yes, the sources. Yes, I will share that with you guys. Right now, while I'm on this one particular page, I'll just put it in the comment. In the chat box, so you guys can see it for yourselves. What I just read about the mahogany skin or whatever, and then Jefferson's notes. I'll go ahead and put that also in the chat box. But again, this will go in the description box later, probably sometime this weekend. So you guys can check that out now. Have a go at it, okay? Let's see. What else? What else? Okay. So yeah, back to Mr. Dixon. He and Gabrielle Tayac were on a panel a few years back, and they were talking about the traveling exhibit as well as the book IndiVisible Lives, African Native American Lives of America. And so I never had a chance to meet him. I don't think I have. But I was watching that video because actually I saved that video years ago. And I just happened to go look at all of the favorites that I saved on YouTube. And so I was like listening to it. I was like, oh yeah, I remember now. I remember how I got in contact with him because I saw that video. And when I saw that video and a couple of things that he talked about, I was like, there you go. There you go. So what I want to do is see if I can find, now it is on the Smithsonian NMAI YouTube channel. And so, you know what? Being that you guys are a great group, I'm going to also put that in the chat box as well as the description box. So you can look at the video later for those who have yet to watch this video. Now, I've gone to this exhibit like twice when it was in the DC area. They actually brought the exhibit back a few years later. It was like in rotation again, which was pretty cool. So what I want to do is I'm trying to see where did he start talking about what I'm trying to find. So forgive me for playing this video and trying to find the exact part that he started talking about North Carolina, Henderson, North Carolina, and all of that. So give me a moment here. Let's see.
Earlier. Now, if anybody's doing any research here, I know Ruth Hunt is here, and we've talked about this. The first thing I was told in doing this research is disregard racial designation. Disregard them, because they are not reliable. Okay? Jack Forbes, certainly, if you go to Jack Forbes, he'll tell you a lot of the tricks that they play. Now, for instance, if an enumerator goes out and returns people as Indians or returns people as Negroes, see, he's paid based on the people that he returned in his report, his enumeration. He was paid a higher amount for recording Negroes than he was for Indians. So where's his bias? He's trying to maximize the money he gets. He's going to make as many people Negro as possible. And so Jack Forbes was fond of saying, they're always losing Indians, but finding Negroes. And this is how this insidiousness. So when you look for your ancestors in your census, I look for three things. The surnames, because we were lucky that people adopted European surnames very early, 1700s. Look at the surnames. look how they cluster. Look at the time and look at the place. And you can backstop this with some of the studies that was done by Gilbert and some other people with Smithsonian that identify these communities, identify these names in these communities. And there you have a way of designating. Also, you can turn their arms against them. I'm reminded of this book by Gloria Bird and Susan Harjo in Reinventing the Enemy's Language. Mm-hmm. And there's this terrible man, Plecker. You remember Plecker, don't you? Well, Plecker was so adamant. He was part of the eugenics movement that had relationships with Nazi Germany, and he was not a very savory character. And he personally changed the designation of people themselves. If it had Indian, he made it C for color. Okay. Then he listed county by county the people who would be trying to pass as Indians. That's a blueprint, Steve, because like Shakespeare said, the lady doth protest too much. So you can take his own list, and if your family is included in that list, you can be relatively sure that they were Indian.
Mm-hmm. Right. And Walter Plecker was the head of the Bureau of Vital Statistics in Virginia, who passed the Racial Integrity Act. And so it was actually outlawed to designate yourself as an Indian, or for midwives or any official record keepers in Virginia, it was prohibited to identify oneself as an American Indian in Virginia from 1924 until 1967, when Loving versus Virginia overturned the anti-miscegenation laws. So this, has huge impact, and maybe we're just at the point where we have a generation that's been born after that era to be able to sit back and reflect on it. There's a term that you've used when you talk about
Okay, so that's just a little bit in that video for you guys. Again, I'm trying to find that one thing about Henderson, okay? So just bear with me.
The heritage. But, we kind of had to keep it hush-hush because the category for them. And so they were subsumed in this category of free people of color. And what's interesting, you can chronologize certain individuals, Nottoway reservation, for instance. As long as they were on the reservation, they were Indian. As soon as they left in the reservation, for whatever reason, they became free people of color. Then finally they became African American, same people. And you can see it in the lifetime of a single individual, this journey, it changes in classification. Now, with regards to the Tudelo people, a fascinating study. The best place to begin is in your own family history. And so I started as a favor to my mother. My mother was very interested in knowing her background. We had the traditions in our family of Indian heritage. But, we kind of had to keep it hush-hush because it wasn't very popular, and people would, you're just making this up, and, all this kind of craziness. But I got information from my elders in 1977 to be exact, and they clarified and gave me places to look. And when I went to those places, I found what I was looking for. For instance, that in my mother's case, where she came from, was one of the places where one of the disbanded bands, if I can use the word disbanded bands, of Saponi people had settled around Henderson in what is now Vance County, North Carolina. And they settled the property of a man named William Eaton, who had been their commander during the French and Indian War. And they stayed there. And they lived at an interesting place called Nutbush Creek. Everybody's heard of the Tina Turner connection. Well, Tina is a Bullock, and we're Bullocks from Nutbush Creek in North Carolina.
Okay.
So there's a suggestion that her folks, in fact, one of her ancestors appears in our family genealogy but fell off. So could he have gone and they named Nutbush after the community that they lost? But we established that there was a Saponi origin there. Then I met Rick Haycock. His wife had done some great genealogical stuff. And they told me the story of the migration of some of the Saponi people to a place called Shamokin, which is now Sunbury, Pennsylvania. Now, one of the first things we had to deal with was the names. The same people may have different names in different localities. And at this time, at an earlier time, in Virginia, North Carolina, a bunch of Siouan-speaking people were called the Saponi Nation when they were placed on a reservation called Fort Christiana.
Okay, I'm gonna stop there with this video. Fort Christiana is actually located in Lawrenceville, Virginia. It's in Brunswick County, which is number one. Is the county right next to my home county, which is Mecklenburg County, Virginia. Number two, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline has a pipeline going straight through that county. So you can look that up as well as other counties. I think, yeah, other counties in Virginia, as well as all the way down, I believe all the way down to Robinson, North Carolina. So Robinson County. So again, you can do your research with the ACP, also known as Atlantic Coast Pipeline. But yeah, it's going right through, not Fort Christiana, not the location of Fort Christiana, but it's close. Because I went down there, me and one of my best friends, we actually went down to Fort Christiana, I believe in 2016, October. And we did see the pipes being laid down and all that, but it wasn't on the fort. So just so you guys know, if you were wondering or interested in the fort, where they put a bunch of natives there and try to Christianize them and all that. That information also is out there if you want to search the history of the natives at Fort Christiana. Anyway, so, but yeah, as you heard, Dr. Dixon talked about Vance County, North Carolina, Henderson, Nutbush, all of that. And the surname Bullock. Bullock is a surname that I'm very familiar with. It's a very well-known, common surname in the region that I'm from. And also in my family church, there were like 3 or 4 surnames, and I say 2 to 3 families. Bullocks were one of them, and Hargroves was another, and I think Terry's and Lewis's. I think those were the main like 4 surnames within that family church, and like 2 or 3 families that went to the church. So, but yeah, I believe I'm related to some Bullocks. But being that they're distant relatives, I never really counted those relatives. But yeah, Vance County, North Carolina is the region that he's talking about. Is also called, parts of it is called Palmer Springs, that region. So anyway, I think again, what I'll do is when I find that letter or the letters that we went back and forth, because I'm sure I didn't throw them away, because I'm pretty particular about stuff like that. To me, that was a gem. Like when he reached out to me, when I sent him a letter, I didn't expect for him to write me back. So I think he was probably interested, being that I was from that region, I had family down there, that he, wanted to help or whatever. But life got in the way, and I didn't write back after like the 3rd letter, I think. So if all is well with him and I find that letter, I am going to pick up from where I left off. Because one thing about genealogy, I kind of put it on the back burner because, life in and of itself got in the way. And I wanted to kind of get away from the paper trail thing and focus more on just being involved meeting new people. And I'm not a bubbly people person type person, so it takes me a while to warm up to people anyway. But I've met so many people that actually help me meet new people, like the individual that's listening to me right now in this room. Do you have anything to say?
About what?
About me being introduced to different people. Because I wouldn't necessarily go up to people and just start talking. That's just not me.
We compliment each other.
Yeah. But you typically are introducing me to different people, right?
Yeah, well, that's who I am.
Yeah, that's who you are. You are a people person. Like you like to
not.
speak. You do public speaking and stuff.
Yeah, but I'm a very diverse, person. So you're going to meet a lot of people. Just in my family, you're going to meet a lot of people.
Yep. So I've met people via the individual Mr. that was just talking that I love very much. I've met so many people as far as the indigenous community in this area. I've met a lot of people outside of social media, right? Because eventually when I met them, then I found out, oh, you're on Facebook. Let me add you as a Facebook friend. But before that, I didn't know who they were. So that in of itself helped me kind of like broaden my contacts and people that I probably would have never gotten to know, even if I saw them on TV or I saw them at an event, or maybe they were arena director or MC at a powwow, whatever. Like I probably would not have gone up to them and started talking. And so over the years, I've just been more interested in just being, right? Being an activist wherever I can. I mean, being in a DC metropolitan area actually helps a lot to get active in that kind of environment. So I would just say I got away from the genealogy paper trail stuff, and I just focus on just meeting new people, or at least kind of being shoved a little bit to meet new people, and then building relationships that way. And people gotten the chance to get to know me and, things like that. And so I show up at things like that. Because there's always something going on, some type of injustice that's going on, right? And so whenever I can, I do participate in things, not only that negatively affect Indigenous American people, but just people in general. Like there was a rally in Annapolis that I went to not too long ago that had something to do with were there Muslims in Australia?
What are you talking about?
Were they Muslims or were they Jewish people? You remember we went to Annapolis and we were at that, I guess it was a vigil. You remember?
I remember being there. I don't know.
But do you remember the group of people that were like, it was like a racist thing? Were they Muslims?
I don't remember.
I think they were Muslims, I think. But anyway, Muslim community, Jewish community, African American community, of course, Indigenous American community, because that's what I started out talking about. Wherever there's an injustice that just pulls at my heartstring, I'm pretty much going to at least show that I'm opposed to treating people in such a horrible way.
Was it at night?
It was at night.
Oh, that was the thing about Christchurch, New Zealand.
Oh, it was New Zealand, wasn't
Yeah,
Australia?
that was a mosque.
Okay, so that was a Muslim attack on the Muslim people,
Right.
or Muslim faith, yeah. So, the point is we are all part of this human race. We are all connected, and when things like that happen, whenever I can, I want to show my support for those who have gone through such a horrific event like that. So anyway, yeah, so that's pretty much what I've been up to the past few years. It's just being more active. I don't go to powwows as much these days, but whenever there's something going on, you know, like a protest, a march, a rally, whatever, me being me, because I'm all about justice, and my zodiac sign, I mean, come on now, Libra. I want justice, I want balance, I want equality. That's what I seek in life. When things get like this, I'm like, nope, we got to bring it back up here again. So anyway, that's what I have to say about that. Okay, so Native says, no, very interesting. Yes, there is a color struggle going on. Very true. And Booty says, love the video. Yay, thanks for loving the video. Let me see what else we got here, because I'm about to be done with this live video soon, guys. Let's see. Because once again, guys, I have yet to eat dinner, and I need to, you know, get myself together, right? And I had so much fun with you guys. I love doing this live thing. Like, this is my thing. Oh, Townsville, North Carolina, which is in Vance County. That's where my church home is located. It was established in 1821. It was formerly called Linsville before 1851, and formerly was in Granville County. Now, another thing about genealogy, for those who are very new to this, is that you have to kind of go backwards when it comes to names of towns and counties, right? Because my county that I grew up in was not always called Mecklenburg County. It was called something else. So when you're looking at records, if you just jump, 100 years and open up a book, you may not be able to connect with like recent, like current information to the old stuff. You have to understand, like I just did a quick Wikipedia search. If you put in Wikipedia something quick, the county and the state or something, and go to Wikipedia, then that should at least get you on the right path when it comes to the history of that county. And so I think a lot of people get mixed up or they get sidetracked, because if you're looking for an ancestor on some kind of document that's dated in 18 whatever or 17 whatever, and you're not familiar with that town or that county or that village or whatever, it's probably changed. The name probably did change from then up until now. So you kind of have to go back, like go backwards and research the county. Like look at it on a local level and then go backwards. Because things change, One thing about the landscape, and one thing I do for employment, for my job, is I'm constantly looking at old plats and surveys. And plats, the names change all the time. The latitude, longitude sometimes changes because, the earth kind of like fluctuates, the land sinks sometimes depending on the area you live in. And so you kind of have to understand like the meets, they call it meets and bounds, like degrees, minutes, seconds, the direction, how many feet and all that when you're looking at raw land on a piece of paper, right? So I'm going to be looking at meets and bounds. And let's say it's now farmland, and a developer is going to buy that farmland and develop a community, right? Well, that meets and bounds, if you go all the way back to as far as the records for that county, if you go all the way back, sometimes in the plats, they will reference an old town or old county, what it was. You can't just stop researching like, oh, well, that's it. there's no more information about this particular property in this county. No, you got to understand what was the county called 5 years before that plat went on record. Okay, that county was also called something else. You have to kind of keep going. You know, you got to keep going. And again, the meets and bounds, landmarks change all the time. A lot of the old meets and bounds that was written way back George Washington time, they may have said, oh, well, the property begins at this point, Rod, at the cedar tree, and then you walk 20 feet to the gray stone. Well, guess what, guys? That was in 1700. That tree might be long gone. That stone might have been moved. So that's why, you know, things like that, it can be a little tricky. But like I said, with me and what I do for a living, at least that part of my job would definitely help me understand records and plats and deeds and stuff like that. Also, in a lot of the old, really old records that you can find at, let's say, the National Archives, which I have yet to go to, and I should, because I'm very close to it. Before I ever move out of this area, I need to make a conscious effort to go to the National Archives in DC. But anyway, a lot of the language, a lot of the spellings is Old English, so you kind of have to understand how to read those type of documents. But you have people that are experts that spell all that stuff out if you search on the internet, like how to read the really old documents. But yeah, so that's just a little bit about genealogy tonight, guys, that I wanted to point out. One other thing. I was in Wegmans, grocery store Wegmans. For those who are not familiar, it's one of my favorite grocery stores. And I came across this section near the organic section, and it was just products that has CBD oil in it. And you know that whole controversy with marijuana, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But this is supposed to not have the element of the oil that makes you high, right? But anyway, so this one particular brand is called Evo. That's EVO Hemp 90. Hemp, like, you know, within the family of marijuana, right? It's called Evo Hemp 90, and this particular brand, it has content on the box, and this is what caught my attention too. It says Native American grown. We've helped dozens of farmers across the country convert their crops to hemp. The Evo Hemp partnership with Alex White Plum aims to bring high-paying agriculture jobs to poor Native American tribes. Learn more at hevohemp.com. So for those who are interested in knowing more about this company, right? Because I don't know much about this company, but if you want to check them out, it's evohemp.com. Later, I'll put that in the description box if you want to check it out. If you find that it is a legit company and you want to support this company, because not only are they striving to help Native American tribes with high-paying jobs, but just in general, like, they're into hemp and planting, and you can do so much with this crop, right? Apparently you can make rope out of this crop. You can make paper out of this crop. It's so versatile. Everything, right? What else?
Bricks, clothes.
Bricks, clothes.
You name it.
Now, when you went to Mississippi and you learned more about, were they talking primarily about hemp?
No.
But did they mention it at all?
A little bit, not a lot.
Okay. Or what we're talking about is it was like a conference type thing for farmers, in particular
American Black farmers and American Indian farmers.
American Black farmers and American Indian farmers. So they had this big conference down in Mississippi. Was it November of last year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, back in November of last year.
2017.
2017, sorry. So long story short, you have many people who want to partake in hemp and growing that crop as well as other crops. But then you have some state regulations out there that still see hemp as an illegal herb or whatever, or they don't want competition, because hemp is a very versatile crop. And like I mentioned in my last video, the first thing the Pamunkey did, once they got federal recognition, they started talking about a casino. And I'm like, okay, I don't understand every state's laws when it comes to hemp, but that would have been an amazing opportunity if they got into the hemp business, right? But whatever, you know, as sovereign nations or domestic sovereign nations or whatever you want to call it, you know, they can figure out whatever source of income for their community that they want to do. But let's just say if I was the leader, if I had a say, I'm like, we're going agriculture, baby. We're going hemp and whatever else is not going to be destructive, okay? But anyway, that's all I have for you guys tonight. Oh, you're a Libra too, native mister. Okay, balance, scales. You're also an air sign, by the way. Yeah, air sign. But yeah, so that's all I have to say, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope all is well with you and your loved ones. Keep your vibrations high, right? Got to keep them high. And until next time, and there will definitely be a next time. I appreciate your time. Like, share, subscribe, hit that bell. Apparently there's a bell that you hit, and if you're subscribed, you'll get notifications whenever I post. I'm assuming you guys are very computer savvy and already knew that, but I just found out about the stupid bell thing. So, but anyway, thanks for watching. Be blessed, stay blessed, be a blessing to others. Take care. Bye-bye. Toodles.